the Silk Route as well, which a load of photographs that come through from Gough. Judith went to Athens, right? She spent the whole holiday sending me 500 photographs. So I've still got to go through them all.
Thought you'd be interested.
Yeah, well, I am interested, but I'm not interested. I'm not interested in the brand of drink your husband drinks, to be honest with you.
Don't remember sending that.
Yeah, anyway, really appreciate that, Judith. Right, so let's find out if there's any news from David.
Oh,
okay. What about Will? Will? No, he's not saying anything.
No, I decided I talked too much last week. I should talk less this week. So I'm just going to listen today.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh.
That's life, isn't it? Right, Anne.
Yes, I watched the science program, the science question. It's led by Brian Cox, the physicist, who has these experts in. He has 4 experts around the subject. And it was about DNA. And one of the experts was an archaeologist. And one of the questions that came in from the audience talking about respecting, when they're taking bones to get DNA and find out from things, about respecting the burials that have been put down. And I've heard you mention this before, that that's important.
Yeah.
He kind of answered this, that the respect was, very important, but we gain such a lot from not only from the past, but about ourselves from the DNA that they would get. His other point that he felt was when he was talking about, the different streams of mankind, the Denisovans and the Neanderthals and he was saying, instead of putting that a bit like them and us, we ought to remember that they're all our ancestors. He was very strong about that. And I wondered how you felt about that part of his answer.
I've just been having a conversation about this about an hour ago. That we put too much relevance on irrelevance, i.e. we make things political too much.
Yeah.
They oh no, the conversation was quite sort of was quite relevant, but I think the point I was making was that in Britain, for example, in Wales, we've got less them and we've got more us. So in other words, when we talk about immigration, Wales is extremely cosmopolitan. We've got Somali populations we've got our first Somali population in Britain, in Cardiff, in the 1880s. We've got big Windrush generation populations in Wales from 1940s onwards. So when people start to use this sort of them and us thing, right? I don't really get it anymore, but it's still something that people talk about a lot.
And he was talking about looking at the ancients and the thems and us. We think we are the Homo sapiens and these others were. And he was saying they're all our ancestors. Was at that level. He was
and that's what I'm getting to. So that's the point I'm getting to. So the point is that when we look, when people say, oh my God, we've got Denisovans, they are over there, and then somebody said we've got Neanderthals, they are there, and they've got Homo erectus and they are there, and this, and then they get themselves in a huge pickle. And the pickle that they get themselves into is that there can't be any intermingling of the Denisovans with us. And then people saying, yeah, but there is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but they're clearly them, right? And even when people are talking about Neanderthal stroke Homo sapien babies in Gibraltar.
Yeah.
They're still sort of saying, "Oh my God, you know, they're part Neanderthal. You know, how can that be?"
Yeah.
So it's just thinking, well, what's your problem? You know, it's why should it be a problem? Why is there this sort of extremely sort of, you know, it makes things very difficult in history to understand. It's it's a bit like conversation I had with somebody for about an hour today. Was like we were talking about the American Civil War, and I was saying it's not as simple as looking at Northerners and Southerners. It's not as simple as saying, well, you know, the Northerners were free people and white people, and the Southerners were slaves and white people. That's not true at all. There were black soldiers fighting in the Confederate Army. There were Mexicans fighting in the Confederate Army, right? It was quite a mixed bag. But people then want it to be them and us, and it doesn't work like that. So many people are trying to make out that history is so simple and there's them and us. For example, in the Napoleonic army, right, of Napoleon, there were Irish generals and there were Irish soldiers fighting for Napoleon. Oh no, we've got to keep it simple. It's French people and English. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
History is so mixed and so and when we look at the Roman world, and we looked at Chinese people and being found in Britain. Why should that be a big deal? I made it a big deal from another angle. I was just saying, look what we've got. It's always been like this, right? There's always been this mixed bag. So why do we make it just one unified authority, which was wrong? So back to what you said a couple of weeks ago, we looked at oh my God, it's amazing that we got like three types of hominids in China 1.5 million years ago. But they're all sort of going along the same timeline. That's the way we should be telling it, not them and us.
Yeah. As I say, he was very strongly on that, and I wondered with you.
Yeah, I'm very strongly on that.
Yeah.
We're talking exactly from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
It's, you know, when back to archaeology. There's a development that I got involved with in 2017-18 that nearly ended up with me losing my life because I said, you know, this is wrong. You shouldn't be excavating human remains and you shouldn't be doing this. And it turns out that the human remains, nearly 600 sets of human remains that are removed from a field, are still in boxes in the university from land that they never developed. And I'm just thinking, well, what was the point in that? What did we actually learn from that? What do we learn? That's the thing. What do we learn by putting things in boxes and forgetting about them? We don't learn anything. And there's too much of this in archaeology. And
you've talked about that for a lot, stuff being in universities and not checked and not, you know.
My God, who is this person? I want to marry them. Do you know what I mean? It's just like we're obviously saying the same thing, but it's there's so much to be said for let's rush and dig everything up, right? The amounts of times I used to do guided walks in the past, and I used to take people to hill forts, and they used to say, "Oh, why don't they dig this place up?" And I'm thinking, well, why should they? Why don't you just take what I'm saying? Oh yeah, but we would learn so much more. Yeah, but who pays for it? How are we going to learn so much more? Because so much of what we have is in boxes in museums which nobody have looked at. There's
plenty to learn there.
there is so much to learn there, and it's just like you know, for example, I've been going through a load of old paperwork recently. I'm thinking, oh my God, that's brilliant. You know, that's paperwork, right? And then I found a box load of artifacts that I've never published, and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to get this stuff, and this is another load of stuff I'm going to publish. This is fascinating stuff. I don't want to be going around. I don't want to be going around doing more archaeological excavation work if I've got so much stuff that I can actually tell you lot about, and I can bring it alive so you can actually understand it. There's a danger when we excavate at Pompeii. We've had that discussion before. There's a danger when we excavate at Pompeii. We want to dig more and more and more without knowing what we've got, right? And this is where I'm going to bring Will on this, right? In the early 1900s and 1920s, they were excavating it in an area called Gethley Gyre, which is in sort of on the border of South Wales and East Wales, right? And there was these massively great excavations, right? And it was a huge excavation area, right? And they backfilled it all, right? And most of the stuff is been totally understudied, and nobody appreciates it, and nobody knows what they've got there. So why did they bother excavating in the first place, right? So now we've got to uncover the whole thing, get the artifacts out, look at them for people to learn. This is backwards. When we look at China, for example, they expose it all and say, this is what we've got. Now you can go and learn from it yourself. It's here, you can understand it, you can learn from it. But we don't do that in the West. It's almost as if I don't know if somebody said in this group or the other group or another group, archaeologists, Andy said it, right? Archaeologists keep so much to themselves until they're ready to publish these things. Yeah, that's correct. But half the time they don't tell us what they're hoping that we don't ask them, and they're hoping. But I'm not saying your area, Andy, but so much archaeological excavation work has been undertaken in South Wales that nobody gets to hear anything about, right? There's whole areas in Wales where they've excavated. They built a new miniature village outside a place called Cowbridge, right? Which is there's going to be Roman stuff there. There's going to be Iron Age stuff, right? I don't even know anything about what the archaeologists did, and it was just down the road. No, they've not really made their stuff published, right? They've not allowed people in on what they found. And
is there a jealousy then? Is there a jealousy between finding things, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's massive jealousy. There's massive jealousy. There is, because
that sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah. But actually, somebody phoned me up the other day. They said, they said, right, we understand you've done all the research on a certain medieval village that you discovered, right? And which I haven't published yet because it's part of my massive backlog of stuff that I've got to publish. I've published some more stuff this year. I published 20 reports last year, but it's still not enough. I've got about 100 odd sites that I've got to publish my stuff on, which is massive. It's going to take me another 5 years, right? But the fact of the matter is, right, this guy phoned me up wanting information on this medieval village that really nobody knows anything about, and I'm the only one who's published anything on it. And she said, by talking to this guy, giving him all the information, right, he might start publishing it himself. And I said, well, best of luck to him, right? Because if anything happened to me, then that bit of the story's gone. So he may as well just use it, right? He may as well just come out and use it and allow people to understand it. And yeah, we are so backwards in this country, and I do think that we've not learned much, and it's something that's not changing. So much of it is developer funded. So much of it is to do with developers having to do the work to inform the people building the houses or the businesses whether we should keep the archaeology or not. Some developers are getting around to the act that what we're going to do. We find the archaeology and we allow it part of the plans, right? We get some of it under glass cases and we can see the walls and all the rest of it. That's what we should be doing. But half the time it's being reburied and the reports are not being published for decades. And what is the point? Archaeology and history should not be for the select few, which it still is. It's very dangerous. We've got so many we've got so many answers to problems in our history in Britain, right? But we have a tendency to keep into boxes. I'll give you you shouldn't have even opened this box. And
I'm very sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Yes, it was. I was teaching in, I think it was 2012. I was teaching in a room in Cowbridge, right? And somebody come in and said, "Oh, look at this! They've Leicester University have found the body under the car park." And I said, "I could have told you they'd found the body in the car park about 20 years ago." Leicester University was the university that I got an archaeological qualification from. Leicester University knew that body was under the car park decades ago, right? But they were ready at that point with the information to say, actually, we have found Richard III. But archaeologists knew it was there for a long, long time. We had the information for a long, long time. So when we went to the newspaper and say, look, we found Richard III, right? Nobody could question it because we had all the information. It was made out to the newspapers that it was a fresh discovery, but that is completely wrong. And this all started off with the discovery of Tutankhamun. I always get the dates around here convoluted, the 3rd of November 1922 or whenever it was. Howard Carter, then it was discussed that somebody else had been in there before him in Egyptian times, and it's all, you know, he drags Lord Carnarvon out and he says, look, I found Tutankhamun's tomb. And it turned out to be Tutankhamun's tomb because Howard Carter knew it was Tutankhamun's tomb because he'd already been in there to prove it was Tutankhamun's tomb. It turned out that Howard Carter found Tutankhamun's tomb after being told by Lord Carnarvon that the money that he gets paid to excavate sites in the Valley of the Kings was just about to finish. So he thought, right, there we go. I just found Tutankhamun's tomb. He kept it. He kept it as a card, right? And suddenly found the finest discovery ever made in ancient Egypt. But he found it within days of his funding going. After 10 plus years of excavating in the Valley of the Kings and finding nothing. Isn't that very odd?
Well, I suppose archaeology does find difficulty in funding. I would think,
yes.
I think it's one of those subjects that does. You know, some things would get a lot of funding, like health or stuff like that. But things like archaeology or astronomy probably don't get so much funding, I would think. You know, they're just of the same public interest.
The thing is, I've got a small number of sites that I have not told anybody about, and which is going in a new book that I'm writing, right? But because I feel I need to publish that book. But some of the stuff I've known about for a decade or longer than that, and I've just kept them for the moment that I've needed them to publish in a book.
Yeah.
I'm as bad as everybody else.
So we'll wait for that to come out, your new book.
Yeah, you won't know about it until it's my new book. But it's the same as that little bit of a jape I was having with Roger at the beginning about why aren't you telling us about the film work that you're involved in? Okay, fair enough. I'm developing a character as a pirate at this minute, and I've got to dress up as a pirate. I've got to learn various lines. I've got to get the persona right for 6 months' time when that character's needed. But I can't tell you what film that is. So I think we do it in normal life, except with archaeology and history. I think it's time now we should be a bit more open because we're losing people's interests. I'll tell you one thing about the history curriculum in Wales, right? I've just been told by a history A-level teacher that they are changing the history curriculum in Wales so much that Welsh history won't exist anymore. So people who are going to do Welsh A-level, right, in Welsh schools won't be interested because we're not going to be doing our own history. So how are we supposed to keep people's interest? The amount of archaeological universities in Britain closing has been dire, you know, in recent times, and And it means that less and less people are getting into it because, yeah, there's not the interest anymore, and people are going to lose their interest, and people are going to find.
And also, schools will stop doing it, so kids who want to do it will be excluded because it's not on the curriculum. Because a lot has happened with schools in that. I know about schools more than anything else. I've been a teacher all my life, So yes, you lose things as soon as
Can I make just one comment?
Pardon? Yeah, I think Anne and I have just finished. Yeah, go on.
Okay. When they excavated Gelli Gare, they spent £160 to excavate over 3 years to uncover most of the ruin, and then they went for another 10 years to excavate some more at a cost of about £450. But if you had more schools who created archaeological clubs, history clubs in the schools as extracurricular activities, that would set up the interest in local communities. And then when local communities concentrated on their own areas and looked at their own history. When I went to grammar school in Pengham, which is 2 miles down the road from Gelli Gare, I used to go cross country running up to Gelli Gare. I'd stop at the common, I'd look in the green field, and I knew there was supposed to be a Roman fort there, but there was no indication of what it looked like. There was nothing there at all back in the 60s. All right. I wasn't particularly interested in history as a subject in the curriculum, but I was interested in what was around in the local area. But you need to encourage that, and schools don't do it. But the schools could do that. Every single school in the UK, from whether you're 5 years of age or 10 years of age, encourage it, develop that interest, and then look for funding and get it from wherever you can.
I think there needs to be a lot more in schools or giving some advice or some way of getting things that children really are interested. If I'm thinking at school, there are lots. I spent hours learning subjects I hated, I've never used and never will use, and excluded from doing A levels and things I wanted to do. And I think that must be common.
Yeah. No. Thanks for your time.
Right, okay, we've gone right over to it, but I think maybe it's one of those sessions tonight that we're going to be doing lots of little bits of things. Right, Roger?
Not for me, thanks. No.
Judith, your Athens lecture will be put together soon alongside the Silk Route, which is another load of other images from Gough. So, Judith, tell us just briefly about your expedition in Athens.
The thing that stood out for me was
me.
What's his name? Oh God, Hadrian's Arch was astonishing. It was right in the centre, and if you looked through it one way, you saw the Parthenon and the Acropolis, and if you turned round, it was almost in equal distance to the Olympic Stadium. It was slap bang in the middle. You could look through it at one side for one way and look through it the other side for the other way. And if you were going to conquer something and say this is mine, that's exactly where you'd put it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
So obviously that is all to come, and the one thing to say about history is that how history has been allowed to remain, and we see that I've mentioned this. We see this in regards to the Roman world, where lots of the former stuff has remained within the fabric of the landscape, and then you've got other civilizations that seem to wish to remove everything. In more recent times, when we look at ISIS in Syria and Iraq, they just want to remove everything. And I think in many ways we've got to allow history to breathe, to tell a story, and I still think we don't do that. We just don't allow it to be told. And we like to invent history. We like to pull down statues to do with certain events in history, and that's a dangerous precedent. Colston statue in Bristol, ripping that down, associated with slavery. Well, people are now not going to know that slavery ever happened because we haven't got a remainder of it. Well, I tell you what, let's just go on.
All it needed was a different. Instead of lauding him for what he did, there should have been his explanation that he was so involved in still on the statue, but give the truth of what he really did. And I think instead of removing the chat, you would have got a more accurate history just by doing that.
The thing is, if you go to Ravensbrück camp, you go to Auschwitz, you go to Dachau, all those localities. If we just flatten them and just get rid of everything, right, then people are going to think that the Second World War never happened.
Yeah,
you know.
Yes, they need to be kept. I'm saying, but rather than move the statue, instead of lauding him as doing all this good work for there needs to be the truth of what he was doing put onto the statue, not get rid of it. I think you're still keeping the truth there.
George Washington was a slave owner.
Mm. Well, I suppose most wealthy people were. Lots of ordinary people owned one that weren't very well off. They would own one slave somewhere and gain from them. So, yeah.
Anyway, Andy, we've got really controversial tonight. Andy, anything you want to say?
No, nothing to add this week. Sorry.
And we got Pat who's joined us from somewhere.
Pat,
I'm here.
Pat.
The computer.
Hang on, Pat. It's not Wednesday the last time I looked, or is it?
I know I can't make it on Wednesday, so I appeared on Tuesday.
Okay. I would like to say thank you for all of you who have managed to pay your fees for the next 2 months. And I'm just a reminder for those that haven't paid their fees for the next 2 months. It's now due. So I just thought I'd mention that. Roger said he'll pay for everybody next year.
Yes, I don't mind. Yes, oh, everything.
Rog.
Mm-hmm.
Andy's already got your number to phone you to do that.
Okay, yeah.
You just made a promise. Right, so I just thought I'd mention that, so that'll cover you for November and December. Right. So, okay, so we've got so many unanswered questions from last week, and the liquid with Gigi, that I'm still looking into that. So there's a few things, Judas images and Goths images. So what I wanted to do was to take us a little bit towards the likes of ancient Egypt. However, before we go there, we got some more controversial stuff. Loving it, but something that Andy requested, so I think we're going to get onto that now. So it's all about Andy. No, it's not. It can be a little bit about Andy, but you know, we like Andy. Right, so here we go. I like you all, well, except for Rog. Right, so we've got some stuff in here. I want us to look at those things, whatever they are. There's a little bit of discussion. Right, so and this here. Now, Andy said, can we know a little bit more about this? Right, so they found a little bit of a stretch of Hadrian's Wall. And I thought, right, I'll dig around a little bit. And this find itself is obviously a little bit of Hadrian's Wall in Cumbria. North of Cumbria, as I get my little set of notes. So this is being excavated sort of within the past few weeks, and to be honest with you, the weather's been so good in some places of Britain that excavation seasons have been extended. And there's me talking about, you know, why are we excavating things and so on, but there are certain times when people do go excavating. They're answering certain questions, and this was one certain question that they wanted to answer. So what we've got is these images here, which is great, right? So we got this location called Drumbridge. So we've got Hadrian's Wall there, we've got Carlisle, right? We've got Bowness there, and that little thing there, they're just talking about a little bit of road. But this darker red here, this itself is Hadrian's Wall. Now, unfortunately, there's big stretches of Hadrian's Wall in the west that they can't find or has been eroded into the sea. But when they excavated a certain area of Drumbridge, as they're traveling away, they uncovered the lower courses of the stone of this stretch of Hadrian's Wall. Now, it could be argued that some stretches of Hadrian's Wall were just a stone footing with sods of earth on top. We don't really know that that's the case or not, but that's definitely the case. The Antonine Wall, built by Antonius Pius, a little bit after Hadrian's Wall, in the 140s AD. So Hadrian's Wall is the AD 120s. So this is the thing. So I thought this sort of make this nicely bit relevant there. And you can see some of the other names of some of the sites. Maryport, I'm sure we've already been to see the remains. Maryport, and there's Pad Castle. Hardknott is obviously south of this. But one thing that interests me is Old Carlisle. I've been to Old Carlisle, and I never really told you the story of it, which I'll tell you now. It was me and a lady that I used to frequent, who I've got 2 children with. We went to old shut up, Rod. You know the woman I'm talking about. No names. We went to Old Carlisle, and she found a piece of inscribed stone, right? Which had some really nice letters on. And unfortunately, we didn't stay together. She kept that piece. It's never been published, but I got a load of photographs of it. And hopefully when I find those photographs of it, I'll get that published as well. But the piece of inscribed stone that we found at Old Carlisle was the first piece of carving with letters on that had been found in Old Carlisle in 100 years. Right. Fascinating find. And maybe she might give it to a museum someday, which would be great. But I wanted to mention that because there's lots of little bits around, Old Penreath there as well. Obviously, we've mentioned Carlisle a few times as well. So if we go to these images, so if we go, the one that I found in the newspaper was this one. And I thought, oh, wow, look at that. I was really, really drawn into this because it looked really interesting. And I mentioned earlier on about some bits of the Antonine Wall. So basically the Antonine Wall, which is further north, which is Glasgow, sort of Stirling, that type of area, right? It stretches across Scotland further up north. That's just basically a stone base, but it's quite a thick stone base, and then they put sods of earth on top of that. This is probably more signs that it was a complete stretch of Hadrian's Wall that was made in stone. And I looked this and I thought, oh wow, that looks great. You've got a bit of a drainage ditch going through it. The archaeologist there, and you've got these bits of wall. And I thought, oh wow, I'll dig into this. And I'm glad Andy asked for more, because if I give you more of the history, and it basically says, so the section was recently unearthed as archaeologists attempt to confirm the course of the wall and find Mile Castle 76 at Drumber in Cumbria. So the Roman wall in the west has largely gone. Now, there's lots of reasons why that might be. And some of it may not have existed, but some of it did, clearly, because we found a bit here, and some of it may have just been sods of earth or eroded into the sea. Its stone having been taken for other buildings, the upper courses, over the centuries since it was abandoned by the Roman military. In fact, only about 10% of the entire wall has survived intact to the present day. That's a really interesting point. When we think about Hadrian's Wall, right, only 10% of it's surviving, right? What they're talking about is not the sort of length of it, but the height of it. So only 10% of the full volume is still with us today, which is, you're thinking, oh, right, that's quite interesting. so to find a section, there is a great discovery and helps to better understand its route. So this thing about the route, they used to think that the Hadrian's Wall sort of ended like I don't know. Obviously, Hadrian's Wall ended there, 75 miles long. But we now know that the frontier did actually continue alongside the sea, right? So, which is a really interesting thing, just a sort of really interesting development that is. So, if we go back again and we sort of think, all right, back to this plan. So, there's a mile castle. What basically a mile castle is, it's as it says. It's there's two barracks either side within that sort of square space. There's a gate going north, a gate going south, a bit of a wall around it. That's a mile castle. Probably big enough for a small sort of garrison of about 20 men or so. So basically, you had these mile castles. There you go, every mile. So you had a fort. You had I think 4 mile castles, another fort, and then a bigger fort somewhere along the line. That's how it worked, anyway. So this one is one of the last known stone remnants of the wall from 20 miles west of Lanercost, which is actually where some of you visited when we actually had our trip for Archaeology Cymru. I think that was one of the last ones I did. But so there you go. So they worked out the mile castle and we've got the bit of the wall there. So the rest of it they're guessing. And there's the wall. Great, isn't it? So you can see that there's 3-4 quarters of wall, right? And it's slightly stepped. So this is how they did things. And the facing stones, front and back. And you've got these core stones. It stands at least 4 courses high in places, including the slabs that form the foundations. So they put big slabs in to sort of form the foundations. It measured under 3 meters wide, so 2.8 meters wide. And then what you've then got is that above that, then the wall gets to a thickness of 2.2 meters, so it's step-like.
Carl,
right. Yeah, go on.
Just a quick observation on that one. The stonework looks very different to the kind of the middle sections that we were looking at on that field trip. They haven't got that regular sized stone.
It's not regular, is it?
No, kind of makes you wonder if it was actually built by a different group of builders.
Andy, you're a little bugger, aren't you? What we're going to do, we're going to compare that with Hadrian's Wall now. Yeah, what a nice thing there. So if we go with I think any section of Hadrian's Wall will do, Andy.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking the stones we were picking out in Lanercost, they were all that regular imperial size that was, they like to build with.
And these are not.
Yeah, and they're not, but they are foundation level, aren't they? But they're perfect.
Yeah,
but
hang on. You're arguing yourself out of an argument here, Andy. I completely agree with you. So, first things first. Let's talk what a mile castle is, right? Yeah. That is a mile castle, right? That's what a mile castle is, right? It looks amazing, right? That's what a mile castle is. And there's some really nice mile castles. East of Lanercost, going towards Birdoswald. I think I got that right. Anyway, going to Birdoswald, there are some really nice sort of remains of mile castles. When you go and see them, they're not as impressive as this naturally, and they seem to be a lot smaller. But however, if we go back to the point that Andy was making, and he said it was a really nice image there. I'm gonna prevaricate a little bit and. Right, there's a mile castle when we actually see it, but what you can do as you zoom in, you can see that the stonework is quite regular, right? Very regular, right? So the one that Andy said, oh, well, anything really.
That was
You
the
can
one there.
see,
Yeah.
look at the regularity in those stones. They're all the same. They're all the same size. They're dressed the same, right? So the point that Andy's made, going back to the image that we're going to go to in a minute, and actually, Andy, there is something in the back of my mind that is saying what you've just said is correct. So actually, this is the bit by Sycamore Gap. That's the Sycamore Gap tree. So yeah, so now the tree's not there. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh God. So that is the Sycamore Gap when the tree was still there. This is the step-like stuff at the bottom, but even that looked regular. These are all regular stone. They're regular size stone, right? And you've got these big slabs on the bottom, but you can only see about one. These are all regular stonework, right? So when we go back to Andy's point, which is a very, very good point, which it's not even in my notes what Andy's just mentioned. I gotta find my images a minute. There we go. Yeah, you can see that they don't look regular. That they all look like it. Now there is a point to what Andy's just said. That's it looking a bit mucky. When I gotta try and remember this. It's believed that bits of Hadrian's Wall had been built before the Emperor Hadrian got there, and then bits of Hadrian's Wall were built after. The bits of Hadrian's Wall was actually built whilst he was there. But oh yeah, that's it. After Hadrian had left, they had other bits of the wall to complete, which was never each shredded, which was west of Lanercost, right? So that could have been built differently by other people. Good point, that Andy. Very good point. But you can see there, and I get really excited by this, folks, because it's like they're showing something that hasn't been seen for a while. And look at all these years, they got a whole school party there. But again, it's likely all this has been covered up, right? And might not be seen again for a long time. And again, it makes you wonder, right, we're excavating this, showing people, right? We know where it is now. It's very likely it's been covered up again. I don't know if it's been covered up again because they've only just excavated it, but it's likely that it will. And that's a good one. They all look different sizes. They all look completely different from the likes of the likes of the normal bits of Hadrian's Wall. But you know what I can see, Andy? That looks like it's rubble from another building.
Is it possible, Carl, that at a certain point towards the end of the life of Hadrian's Wall, before the Romans retreated, that in fact they took parts of other buildings, because it looks like you've got some cornerstones there, the triangle stones. It looks like they've taken the corners of other buildings possibly to repair the wall and might have just filled it
Yeah,
in.
this could be a repair job. The problem is, right, it was never ever called Hadrian's Wall. It was just the wall, right? And it was, yeah, it's the narrative to Hadrian's Wall is not, we don't really know much about it. I was actually, oh God, guys, I want to take you to somewhere else. I want to take you to Boudicca a minute. I want to take you somewhere else after this, right? Because this has been going around my head today as well. But we won't do that a minute. But I want to try in with what we're doing with this a minute, right? So if there's any more notes on this, I'm going to see if I've got them on my device here. And 1 second. Where's my device? I had my device a minute ago. I seem to have lost my device a minute, but the one, oh, hang on, that my notes are in here anyway. So if we can go to right, hang on a minute. There. Is that there? No, this is something else. I don't think there was any much more in my notes to say, but the point is, is that this is really intriguing what Andy's mentioned. And it looks very rough, and it just doesn't look like this is in any way the same fabric and the same construction as the likes of Hadrian's Wall for the other stretch. So, oh yeah, so here we go. I've got my other notes. So here we go. A section of Hadrian's Wall complete with facing stones and rubble core. And it basically said it originally stood at 3.6 meters. It continues, albeit less preserved, with only the foundation slabs visible on either side. So they've excavated this. They've given it a good job. And the one thing about all of this, if we think that 10% has survived, right, and we're so limited with what information's about this. So if Hadrian's Wall had gone to Hadrian's Wall before it was ever named Hadrian's Wall, which was later on, and he actually wrote things down like Julius Caesar, we'd be basing everything on the Hadrian's Wall on what Julius Caesar wrote. Agreed? No, start again. If Hadrian was like Julius Caesar and Julius Caesar wrote histories, we would have more information about Hadrian's Wall, but we didn't write about it, right? So it's like an enigma. There's so much missing in this whole thing, right? So I want to let you into my head about something else, which is next week, not next week, but in a few weeks' time, we'll be looking at the rebellion of Boudica, right? Which we haven't done. We've done lots of other things like this, and we're going to be doing Boudica, right? And we're going to be doing it out of context because we've done the other ones as well. So what I'm going to do, I want to let you into my mind, and I want to prepare you for this, right? Now, again, Roman thing, right? So what we've got those veterans there defending the steps of the temple of Claudius, which was in Colchester, Camel and Junum, right? It was likely they were still constructing it, right? And then the defenders were forced into the Temple of Claudius with their families, and everyone was burnt to death, right? Except we're guessing that whole thing, right? So if I can just my mind went somewhere today, right? And I just need to get a map, a Boudica map. I just want to let you into something a minute. So this was right, where's a decent map? Why haven't I got a decent map? Right, hang on. There. Right, okay, that'll do. Right, so basically we got this whole thing, right? And I sat down. I was thinking I'll get you a better map. I've just got to try and spit this out better. Oh, that's good. Hang on, that one. Right, okay. I spit this out better. So basically it's AD 61, right? And the figurehead of Boudicca, won't say anymore. A group of Iceni and other tribal people headed towards Camel and Junum, right? With the aim of capturing it and with the aim of, trying to whatever they're doing, right? And it got me thinking, what were they doing? Boadicea wasn't in touch with anyone in Dorset or anybody sort of west of there, and and there was lots of things going on. And I just sat down and thought the point in my head that was going, I thought, what exactly happened in Colchester, right? What exactly happened in Colchester? What exactly happened in Londinium? What happened in Verulamium, which is St. Albans? And what I was thinking is, where's the evidence? Can we actually prove that lots of what happened in the revolt of Boudica actually happened or not. So I had all these questions, and that's going to be a class that we do in the near future, right? So what we always think of, right? And let's just get some of these wonderful images. This is famous, right? We get that, right? How much of this did how many warriors actually, how big was the army of Boudica? These questions. If these people knew where that they were going to be attacked, there was no defenses around Camel and Junum, why didn't they escape? Could they have escaped? How many people escaped? How many warriors did Boudica have with her, right? And I started asking all these questions. And then I asked the questions, where's the archaeological evidence? And I didn't get answers to most of those questions. So that's going to be a talk that we're going to be doing in the future. And then this leads us on to something else. So I know this is a little bit convoluted tonight, but it's designed that way, right? So I then started looking on the internet, and guess what? They found a coin hoard in North Wales, right? Yeah, there it is. 23rd of October, they found a new coin hoard in North Wales. I thought, wow, this is really interesting, right? I don't care who found it. They were two metal detecting enthusiast guys, but it's the way they reported on this. They said the discovery was made in a field in North Wales by two avid detectorists and is believed to be one of the biggest hoards ever found. Well, not in England, right? Because one of the biggest hoards in England contained 55,000 coins, right? This contained 15,000 coins. There's a big difference. So they're talking about Wales, right? Wales, biggest in Wales, not Britain, Wales, right? So a metal detector, I think the biggest hoard is into the hundreds of thousands on the continent. So there we go. So a metal detectorist has uncovered what archaeologists believe one of the largest Roman coin hoards ever found in the UK. And there we go, just a normal, ordinary day metal detecting. So what we then go is that I was looking at this, and I was reading the article, and as I was reading the article, I was getting more and more upset, right? And the reason why I was getting more and more upset was that it had no information in it. It was telling you nothing about the coin hoard. It's almost as if it's now just about a hoard in the field being found. It's a Roman hoard. It was found in a pot. And they don't want to tell us anything about it. So I started managing to get an idea of how of the dates of the coin hoard, and maybe what it was about. And lots of the copper coins looked in a dilapidated condition, right? So it sort of it goes. And actually, there's some better images on this online. I just wanted to bring this to you because this may be something that some of you might not have seen, right? But this has been made in the past few days. So if we go, it's headlines. You go epic. The one I've got here is it says epic discovery. It's got epic discovery, and it says 15,000 coins. And as you start to get on, there we go. Epic. Look at those. Absolutely beautiful, right? But sort of what I'm disconcerted with it is that these two hoards were found in two pots. And it's basically saying, oh, you know, it gave us goosebumps to find it. And one of them said David had been metal detecting for nearly 10 years and says before this find he had uncovered about 2,700 Roman coins. And I was just thinking, my God, as an archaeologist, I've only ever found two. What's the big deal about the volume of these things? So it is believed they don't know how many coins are in these two pots. They believe that there's between 10 and 15,000 coins. Look, it's either 10 or 15,000. right? It's about the volume and it's about not the information. And I think there's a danger in this. If you're not giving people information about these things properly, right? It just turns out to just be about money and wealth and finding these things, which I feel is a bit upsetting, right? Because it's not really telling you about the story. It's not really helping us, right? And it's sort of, there's lots of things about this, and they said, oh, something told me that there was stuff in the field, and they detected these things, and so on. And so I started looking at this, and then it said, oh, as soon as they found it, here we go. The pair, this is this. They said, oh, we couldn't believe it. Two hordes in the same area. It was beyond anything we could have imagined. The pair, under guidance from local authorities, were granted permission to excavate the site themselves. No archaeological experience at all. Working carefully, they recovered the hordes over 6 hours, documented every step on video, and collecting soil and rock samples for later study. He was also full of praise for his tools. The manicore is powerful, precise, and once you learn its language, it guides you to extraordinary finds. The hoard has been delivered to Cardiff Museum for expert analysis and conservation. Archaeologists are now studying the site, and the discovery is expected to be declared treasure trove under UK law. So I was looking at this and I'm thinking, right, this probably dates from about maybe the 270s, or it might actually be earlier, from about the 150s, from the rim design on the pot. But I was just a little bit sort of upset by the way this has been reported, and it just makes it about finding things. It makes it about anybody can be an archaeologist and dig these things up, and they can't. And oh, I found 2,700 coins before this, and it's just about finding these coins, and it just makes me so angry that there's no historical relevance in this. There's no meaning to this. You may as well just find a hoard of sort of coins that a leprechaun has actually just showed you in a field. Right. Oh, there's my rant. Let's go on to something else. So let's just show you this now. Right, so I think I've done all of that now. There we go. We've done all of that stuff. And oh yeah, there's another hoard being found in Corbridge. Right, and this is, look at that there.
Cool.
Can you fathom anything like that? Look at that. That is unbelievable. That's completely different from the other one. And this came up on my doodah, a remarkable discovery of 160 gold Roman coins known as aura, or aureuses, was made in Corbridge, uncovering a significant piece of Roman history. Found beneath the floor of a Roman house, this treasure trove offers a glimpse into the wealth and daily life of the Roman Empire's northern outpost. The aurae were likely hidden during times of unrest. What, in a Roman fort which is being defended, offering clues about the economic and social conditions of Roman Britain. Corbridge, once a bustling town near Hadrian's Wall, continues to reveal fascinating artifacts from the Roman past. And now the big battle is who actually owns them. It just sort of makes me wonder. It really, really does. And anyway, so there they are. And another thing, quite quickly. I was going through a load of old postcards, and I found this. I thought, wow, look at this image. This is the Roman amphitheater at Tunis, and there's a story about this. My granddad actually was an engineer on planes in the Second World War, and he served in North Africa. And he sent me. I've still got a photograph he took with a box Browning in 1943. So when I find that, I'll be able to show that to you. So What I want to do now is I want us to go away from the Roman stuff, and I want to take us to ancient Egypt. And then what we do, we do mention another empire as well, which replaced. There we go, the Assyrian Empire. So that's really interesting. So we've got names like there on Tanis, Memphis, and Thebes. So these are all good. So we have a little look at that. I'm just going to check the time. A minute. So we're gonna dart into ancient Egypt and try and get a little bit of this, because as part of the Roman Empire, ancient Egypt is absolutely massive. So as you can remember, guys, we're at the top here. Let's explain why ancient Egypt is massive, and then we'll take a little bit of a break, if you don't mind. So what is absolutely massive about ancient Egypt is that whenever you see those Hollywood films, right, it talks about ancient Egypt being the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. You know, we need ancient Egypt because that's where all our wheat comes from, you know, and that's what makes the Roman Empire flow. But ancient Egypt was far from its glory days when the Roman Empire actually finally grabbed it and absorbed it to the Roman world in 30 years BC. And that is with the defeat of the forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. So again, if we sort of look at this and we think about the strategic nature of where ancient Egypt is, you know, it offers trade, right, to the worlds beyond the Roman Empire. It's sort of part of that sort of Silk Route stuff, the Red Sea. It's all part of that, and you've got Egypt there, and you've got the sort of Arabia, and you've got the likes of Judea. So this is and Alexandria, and you've got the lighthouse. It's played a massive role in the Roman world, and there's a name on there, the Oxyrhynchus. Now, Oxyrhynchus is a place that I've mentioned a number of times. Now, Oxyrhynchus is a place that we've got lots of papyrus writings which have been found at Oxyrhynchus. And Oxyrhynchus is the Egyptian equivalent of the libraries of Pompeii. You know, the Julius Caesar's dad's library at Herculaneum, and so on and so on. So Oxyrhynchus, there's lots of really amazing stuff. So at the top there, again, before we puddle off and have a little break, let's just let's get my notes up here now. So again, this is Egypt. The year is 1,000 years BC. Egypt's age of empire was over. The great pharaohs of the New Kingdom, the likes of Thutmose III, Amenhotep III, Akhenaten, you know about him, and Ramesses II were long gone. So it's not a period when they're sort of building great pyramids anymore, that's for sure. Egypt entered a millennium, 1,000 years of political division, foreign domination by the Libyans, for example, and the Assyrians, and cultural endurance. Despite invasions and internal chaos, Egyptian religion, art, and identity survived, a testament to the civilization's deep roots in the Nile Valley. And this is a point this is another point. There's another point within a point here, right? Now, this is an Assyrian sort of deity, and we turn to a wonderful piece of basalt carving from ancient Egypt. Now, the point is that how is it ancient Egypt was conquered by various different countries and finally by the Romans in 30 BC? And still there's so much in Egypt still to see. Tanis, Alexandria, Giza Plateau, Memphis, you name it, there's loads of sites, right? So why is it there's so much left for people to connect to? And we were talking about this with China, for example, that there's so much of a connection of a landscape when we look at the dynasties of things that have survived. And in some ways, it's the same with ancient Egypt. You know, obviously, if the ancient Egyptians didn't like certain leaders, they might build a brick wall around it, or they might sort of carve off the names of those pharaohs. But in the main, most of the wonderful ancient Egyptian stuff has remained within the landscape. And I just wanted to have a little look at ancient Egypt tonight, and then mention the Assyrians as well. And sort of next week, we can sort of bring all the other bits of stuff into what we've already done, including slides from Goff and Judith. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break now. If you could probably work out, I'm still in work. So, yes, I've been doing pirate stuff today, but that's life. Right. Okay. Any questions, David?
Oh, thank you.
Andy?
No, it's good. Thanks.
Who else have we got? Pat?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
You've usually got loads to say, Pat. Oh my God, you can't shut you up. Right. What about you, Judith?
Just quickly about Boudica. My mother was from, is.
I thought you were going to say she's bloody related.
No, she's from Norwich, and the story that she was told about Boudica was that she had an encampment on Kett's Hill in Norwich. Now, Kett, sorry, I've come back with a horrible cold. The Robert Kett that was also a rebel in the 1500s, but her encampment was on Kett's Hill, and I just wondered if that could have been a hill fort at one time or another.
One of the points I was thinking.
Everything's gone.
Can you hear me?
No, I can now. Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking about Boudica was that I had some key questions. Oh, and by the way, you know that. Oh no! What the heck? I knew there was something missing. I was going through my records, right, and I found, you know, that Roman road up by you that you did some film footage from.
Yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Oh heck. Is it Wheeler's Road or something?
Oh, was it Wade's Lock or whatever? Wade's Road or whatever. Wade, is it Wade? Anyway, the bit of road that you've got near you, right?
Yeah.
I was going through my records, right? And I found a load of old photographs of it, well, dating back 30 years ago, right? And it was showing a lot more of the ditch, right? It was showing a lot more. It was showing it a lot more clearly than you took photographs of.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, that if it was really clear and discernible 30 years ago, right, being that this is a Roman road, right, and just in a short period of time from these photographs and you going there, it's sort of become unreadable as an archaeological monument, right? Can it therefore be that old? Because if the stuff that was visible that was supposedly Roman, right, has been lost in the past 30 years, right? How is that the case? Because surely, if it was that prominent, it wouldn't have been lost in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So I'm desperately trying to find I've got to get a pen. I got so many things I've got to do next week. It's shocking. So I've got to I got to get those Roman images up. I got so much to get ready for next week. So Roman images of road. So yeah, the point of I interrupted myself. So this is one thing that I was thinking of. I was trying to get into the mind of Julius Caesar, not Julius Caesar. I was trying to get into the mind of Boudicca, right? So the simple story of Boudicca is that there's this woman. She's a few things happen to her children. Something happens to her. We'll go into detail again, and terrible things. So we're told, and the historians tell us that the Roman historians tell us what happened to her daughters, and you could be a bit suspicious about that before we even start. But anyway, I'm thinking, well, okay, is she really aiming to conquer the rest of Britain and kick the Romans out? Does she really care about the rest of Britain? Is that her aim? So she's not a British ruler. She's just a queen that is ruling over the Iceni. I'm not lessening it, but her whole world is in East Anglia, right? So she's got no knowledge of the rest of Britain. So why does she want to conquer the rest of it? What's she got to gain from it? Why does she need to defeat all the Roman armies in Britain? And I started thinking, there's something really odd about this. And then you've made a point, Ket's Hill. That's where Boudicca was meant to have encamped. Well, she went to lots of different places, but did she actually go there? That's the question. It's the same as the Caraticus thing. Was there two Caraticuses? Was because one minute he's in London and the next minute he's leading tribes in South Wales who don't even know who he is. And you're thinking, well, who makes this stuff up? And then you start to think, well, I think what I need to do, it's better if we look at Roman Britain, right? Okay, let's just level with you guys, right? We look at Roman Britain and we say, right, let's just forget about all of Julius Caesar's writings, right? Let's forget about all the stuff that Roman historians wrote about Britain, right? We wouldn't know Julius Caesar invaded in the first place. So all that's gone, right? So if nobody wrote, if there was no historical writings about Boudicca, right, we wouldn't know she existed. And that's a fact. Because where is the archaeological evidence about Boudicca, right? Other than the historical stuff, other than burnt layers in Colchester, Londinium, and Verulamium, which we're going to talk about, right? This Battle of Watling Street between Boudicca and the Romans may have been completely made up. Because there's no archaeological evidence. The only stuff written about this battle is that the Romans managed to defeat an army of 100,000 warriors with 6,000 men. That's something out of a glorified look at I don't know, Ben-Hur. Do you know what I mean? So God, you got me off on one then, Judith. Right. Roger. Rog. Go on.
No, I'm fine.
Oh well, but I don't let us wait. You know, we waited 4 hours for the answer. Right, Anne.
No, nothing to say. Thank you, but interesting. Yeah, again, always interesting.
Roger, don't rush into it. Don't rush into it. Right, Will.
No, sounds good so far. I'll keep my counsel.
Right, okay. Then, well, we're gonna be back on in 10 minutes because you know that's life, and so we don't even know what time it is. So let's work out the. It's 8:27, so we'll be back at 8:37, and don't let the bed bugs bite. I'll see you back soon. And Pat, don't fall asleep. If you hear her snoring.
Booze. Oh. Goodness. This is down. Oh. Thank you. Oh. Okay. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Good. Oh. Ah. Okay. Oh. Oh. Cheers. Oh. Fine. Good. Nice. It's. Oh.
Roger, what are you talking about?
Nice. Good skin.
Oh, I'm gonna love telling you about Libya.
Body. That's fine. Right now. It's. Oh. Mm. People. This.
Oh,
It's. It's. What's in the Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Oh. Mm. Shucks. Gosh. Mhm. Mm. Oh. Oh. Yes, I guess. Oh.
Please believe me, can I see? There's nothing wrong with a bit of Art Garfunkel.
Oh, good.
The thing is, Roger, right, you've been mumbling for the past 10 minutes.
What? Checking
Well,
my
you're like a bloody diddy man in a bloody diddy box.
checking my vitamins.
Yeah, you need to check something, mate.
Checking
That stuff
vitamin E
might
for
be.
skin. Because of
What's that?
vitamin E for my skin.
Vitamin E?
Vitamin E, yeah.
I can't. Can you get vitamin E in something else?
Nuts, cereals, olive oil.
All right, I'm a nut. Right, okay then. Let's crack into it. So, there's a few rather interesting things about ancient Egypt in this sort of last stage. So let's crack on. So somebody's just sent me an interesting text. They said, "What fish do you fancy from work?" Oh, he's a fishmonger, isn't he? I've done him a favor, and he wants to know what fish I like. So I said I'm a vegetarian. I want some I want some seaweed. Yeah. Anyway, so Michelle can have a cod. Right. So let's crack on. So sharing the screen. Lava bread. That's what I was trying to think of, which is Welsh seaweed. The problem is, I could never understand why when you eat lava bread, it's crunchy. It's supposed to be just be. It's supposed to be just seaweed, isn't it, Rod?
There might be the store part.
No, Rod, you're missing the point. It's bits of crustaceans, isn't it? You know. Right. So there we go. The Temple of Ramesses II. This is the period after 1,000 years BC that Egypt is on a decline. Forget about the Temple of Hatshepsut. Forget about the Temple of Uxor. The Temple of Abydos. And then you go all the way north and you think about Alexandria, think about the library. Now, this is the type of area that we're talking about from 1,000 years BC all the way through to 30 years BC. Now, there are a number of interesting areas about the chronology here in ancient Egypt. And it's that thing that I left before the break. It said, you know, the identity of ancient Egypt survived, even though there were periods of invasion, internal chaos. Religion, art, and identity survived, a testament to the civilization's deep roots in the Nile Valley. So between 1,000 years BC, you are entering a millennium of political division and foreign dominance, whether they're conquering the land or not, cultural endurance, all these wonderful words. And I think to sort of start to sort of key in a little bit more with the land of Rome, you've got to try and sort of add in Egypt, because it is important. It's a period of nearly 1,000 years. It's a time that comes after the great age of the pharaohs. We all know Tutankhamun, Ramesses the Great, but it's far from a dark age. In fact, Egypt at this time, that 1,000 years before the birth of Christ, is an Egypt of centuries, showing a remarkable period of endurance, a people that wanted to survive. And despite everything that's happened, they adapted right up to the final years of Egyptian native rule, which ended with the death of Cleopatra in 30 years BC. So entering these notes and to try and get a real depth of this world, you've got to sort of think about, you've got to really think about the chronology. You've got to try and think about what's going on. This is Egypt after the Romans had conquered it in 30 years BC. So there's the Egyptians called their sort of worlds, period, the Middle Kingdom, the Old and the New Kingdom, and this is known as the Third Intermediate Period. The first bit is known as the Third Intermediate Period, going all the way back to 1,000 years BC. In fact, going back to 1,070 years BC, up to 664 BC. That's the first bit that we look at. So this is a period of confusion and transition. It's a period when the Libyans conquer Egypt in a way that is a little bit different from normal conquest, right? We'll talk about that in a moment. So it's ruled by the Libyan dynasties, and they rule from basically the north. So so we look at all of this, right? And they sort of rule from the northern bit, and it's sort of very odd in the way that it's sort of ruled over. Rather interesting map there. And if we go back to here, Tanis there becomes an important place where the Libyans are ruling from. In fact, this really interesting conquest. And then when you talk about this is the bread basket of the Roman Empire, the green stuff is the bread basket. The Nile, that's what gives Egypt its longevity, the flooding of the Nile. So the Libyan leaders, after 1,070 years BC, they're very unlikely to have built any pyramids or any temples. But the Libyan leaders, again, it's a weird conquest, which we'll talk about in a few moments. The Libyan leaders keep Egyptian culture alive. So the Libyans from over on the left there, from modern day Libya, conquer Egypt, but they keep everything going, right? If you go to the Cairo Museum today, you can still see the silver coffin of a leader from Tanis, a masterpiece that rivals Tutankhamun's, but found in a much humbler tomb. And let's show you, because I wasn't going to show you this, but I'm going to show you it anyway. Let's show you the coffin of this leader. It's actually unpronounceable, so we're going to type it in anyway. I think it would be Pususasninus, the first, and this. Look at that. Now, that's a Libyan pharaoh. That's the face of a Libyan pharaoh. So the Libyans conquer Egypt, but they keep everything as it is. Now that's exactly like what's happening in China, right? For some reason, what's going on in Egypt replicates a world in a very distant plane. But we've got to talk about how the Libyans actually conquered this domain. So by the late 700s BC, a powerful neighbor to the south, Kush, Namibia, begins to rise, and the Kushite kings invade Egypt and establish the 25th Egyptian dynasty. Again, it's called the dynasty. And that's where you get the Black Pharaohs from. So, that's another bit of the story. We're going to talk about the Libyans again in a moment. So if we go back to, there's another map, isn't there? So which I've just sort of showed you a few moments ago, which is here. This one here. Right. So, somewhere along the line, this is all coming into play, right? So this is the map at the time of the Libyans, and you can see the ones who rule Egypt, right, have got to conquer the area of the Nile, and then you're sort of in, basically. So this is the Black Pharaohs. So the Black Pharaohs sort of rule. So if we go back to the other chart, the Black Pharaohs rule all of that. There we go, the Nubian desert. They rule Sudan, they rule Nubian area, they rule Egypt, and they rule it for nearly a century. And there's a statue of the Black Pharaoh, King Taharak, which is in a British museum. And this again is a cultural fusion. The Nubian by birth, Egyptians by faith, and one of the few rulers who actually tried to restore Egyptians' old glory. So the Nubians are really interesting. The Black Pharaohs are really, really interesting when we look at the story, right? Oh. But if we go back again, we'll sort of keep this little bit of a chart on there to sort of get a little bit more Roman. I want to tell you about these Libyans because it is absolutely fascinating. I don't know if I got another. There we go. That's a Libyan pharaoh. Yeah. I thought this was absolutely fascinating, so I'm going to read this out here. So I told you the Libyans invading Egypt was odd, right? So if you write in the question, did the Libyan Empire conquer Egypt? The answer is no, but they did. So what do I mean by that? It's not a military conquest, right? They just take over. And there's a parallel with that, which we'll talk about in a moment, right? So instead, Libyans integrated with the Egyptian army. So the Libyans in the Egyptian army rose to power in the Egyptian army. And then there was a Libyan commander called Shoshaik. It was like a Libyan general within the Egyptian army, and basically said, right, I'm taking over. So Shoshaik the First, seizing the throne of ancient Egypt by the year 945. So for about 80 odd years, the Libyans had started to get more and more powerful, making their power known in ancient Egypt. And they basically said, right, we're ruling the place. So, there's a parallel with that in British history, right? It's called the Anglo-Saxons, right? It's called the Normans, right? So this is a really interesting point to sort of make a parallel. So when people talk about the Anglo-Saxons, they talk about an Anglo-Saxon invasion. So when people talk about the Vikings, they talk about a Viking invasion, right? So when people talk about the Normans, they talk about the Norman invasion, right? But it's when you look at it, when you break it down, there were probably thousands of Anglo-Saxons in Britain, but they managed to take control of Britain and all the people. So it's the Anglo-Saxon period, but there are not hundreds of thousands of Anglo-Saxons in Britain. It's basically, we call it the Anglo-Saxon period. It wasn't a proper invasion, a bit like this. You get people coming over, they start to take over villages, and then lo and behold, it's Anglo-Saxon Britain, right? And then you talk about that with the Viking period. The Vikings get very powerful on the East Coast. They start ruling over villages. There's not hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Vikings in Britain, but on the East Coast of England, it's the Viking period. Same as the Normans. What happens with the Normans? They basically say, right, other than one family, King William decides to replace all of the ruling families in Britain with Normans. And there's loads of Normans still in Normandy. It's just that we call it the Norman period. They're just the rulers. And it's exactly what's happening with ancient Egypt. The Libyans do the same. So this period is sometimes called the Libyan period of ancient Egypt. And integration and rule. For centuries, Libyan tribes raided Egyptian territory, but eventually some were hired into the Egyptian army. And where's the parallel there? Anglo-Saxons were hired to fight for the Roman military in Britain. It's except they didn't go home; they stayed, and then they started to usurp power. Oh, there's a parallel. There you go. So, over time, these Libyan soldiers gained increasing control and influence within the army and the government. And Shashik the Libyan commander and chief of staff of the Egyptian army, took power and reunited Egypt under his rule, becoming pharaoh. So, you know, it's just basically saying somebody, well, I lead the army, I'm Libyan, that's it. I'm now in charge. So what we're talking about is the characteristic of this sort of Libyan rule is that during their rule, the Libyan pharaohs maintained much of traditional Egyptian kingship, and presided over a military and economical resurgence in the country. And we're talking about religious thing as well. But eventually, sadly, we have the decline and division, and the dynasty eventually collapsed into chaos, and Egypt was again divided amongst numerous warlords and regional leaders. So that's where that sort of chart came in earlier on, where everything's in a mess. Where's that messy map there? So basically, Egypt's all over the place, right? So then what you do have, right? Then what you do have, you've got the Black Pharaohs invading, and they're basically saying, right, enough of this nonsense, guys, right? We're doing our thing, right? So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to, if we're going to introduce people into history, let's go and find them. So let's, then we've got to talk about the Book of the Dead as well. So Black Pharaohs. This part of Egypt is something that people don't talk about. They usually talk about the great times, you know, of Khufu building, you know, the Great Pyramid in the 260s BC, or we talk about Tutankhamun in 150 years BC, or we think about before that we think about sort of the period of Ramesses and so on, right? So Black Pharaohs. Here we go.
These are
you can't
Nubians.
make it up. Nubians, exactly.
The black must be south.
And there's the Black Pharaohs. And they actually built their own type of pyramids. They had these long tapering pyramids. Very, very different. So, you know, do you know that, guys, great. Sometimes people say things in my class, and I think that's really relevant. And the conversation we had earlier on, me and Anne, was everything that we're talking about now. Can you see what we're doing? It's linked in, or Anne didn't know I was going to do this, but we've ended up doing it anyway. So what we've got now, we've got the late period of ancient Egypt. You know, we've got a new sense of pharaohs, right? So what we've got is we can clearly see now that the Black Pharaohs are in charge, and this period itself is now something that is very, very special when we look at ancient Egypt. So a powerful neighbor to the south, the Kush in Namibia, begins to rise the Kushite kings, and they invade Egypt and establish the 25th dynasty, as we've mentioned. And these Black Pharaohs from Nubia, they get this sense of, as I've already said, I'm repeating myself here. So Nubians by birth, Egyptian by faith, and one of the few rulers who actually tried to restore Egypt's old glory. Now, this is, again, I know I've repeated myself there, but when you think about all of this, you think about people seem to invade this country or take over, but they still want to continue what is already there, you know. We're thinking about it's really, really odd that hang on, can I get to that one there? And we're thinking, you might think about black basalt, but that's a Black Pharaoh. And it's in some ways trying to keep things going, even though you've taken over the place. And it seems that happens with China. And we've got a load of, this is one of the great Nubians of the 26th dynasty. And you've got these, not that one, that's wrong. Look at that there. If you that's classical ancient Egypt, right?
That's
That's
basically find this sort of statues and the
that, Rog?
carving is so good. You
Yes.
never quite understand it. So fine,
Yes.
detailed, well finished,
Yes.
and they had basic tools, either copper or hard stones. They say, but it's amazing.
It's unbelievably amazing, and these were decorated as well. And when they're brand new, they're unbelievably exactly. It's
ancient peoples.
Yeah, it is it is something really special, and this is another one of their leaders.
Granite. Some of the statues are done from granite. Well,
yeah, this is granite. I think. Yeah, look at that.
Here. Look how finely finished that is.
And you've also got nipples there. They're great. So this is one of the other leaders. So the one that we just looked at, this Psamtik, and this is they talk about this as the Renaissance of ancient Egypt. They really want ancient Egypt to sort of survive, and they really want this sort of world. The Egyptians took back to their ancient past, copying old kingdom statues, reviving old hieroglyphic styles, and restoring temples. So this is a period of great change and opulence. But then what happens is the Assyrians, right? So the Assyrians now kick off in 525 BC. So these Black Nubians have done a really good job of trying to get ancient Egypt back together, unifying the whole of this. Yeah, they unified the whole thing, and now suddenly, what's happening is that we move away from this world, and we think again up this Psamtik, the first one of the Nubian pharaohs, and then what we then have, we have another world that wants a bit of Egypt, and it's these guys, it's the Assyrians. So some jumping in then is the Assyrians. So you're looking at the Assyrian world, and it's the Egyptians' independence doesn't last for long. So it's 525. The Assyrians invade from Mesopotamia. These are new boys on the block, right? These are the new people on the block. And the Assyrians invade from Mesopotamia. And then what happens is, and later the Persians conquer in 525. So that there's all this sort of Assyrians coming in, invading, and then 525 the Persians are in there. Under Persian rule, Egypt is governed by foreign leaders, and although there are brief native results, even a few last pharaohs lose control of the destiny of Egypt. So what's basically happening is that these people from the east keep coming into Egypt over this period now. So after 525, they keep coming over. They cause absolute pandemonium in Egypt. But the Egyptians do take control. They kick out the Persians, and the Persians are back. They do take control. This thing keeps going back and forth, back and forth. So it's destabilizing this world of Egypt. It's really destabilizing them. But what is really there, and what is really happening, right, is that from outside, right, the Greeks come in and they start to help out the Egyptians. They start to go in and they start to help out the Egyptians, which is again really, really odd. So I just want to chuck a couple of things in before we sort of move on to the next bit. So across Egypt, from this period, if we go back to that map, I told you there's lots happening tonight, but I just wanted to give you just a bit of an overview. So what we've got is this map. You can actually find some of the places I mentioned. So hang on. Go on, stop. Hang on there. Right. So what we've got is that within this whole period, within this 1,000 last years up to the birth of Christ, you know what we've got temples at Karnak still being used, right? And we've got this world at Philae. These temples are still being used. One thing is really becoming clear. People in ancient Egypt are burying people in a different way. Instead of having you know, pyramids, you know, instead of the leaders having pyramids, for example, we know about 90 odd pyramids in Egypt, and we're forgetting about the Valley of the Kings. People are being hidden better, right? And you know, mummification still continued. People were still being mummified. You know, the skills on how to mummify people were still present all the way up until 30 years BC. There's a really interesting thing here. There's a really interesting point here. That I'm saying that mummification continued. I'm saying that coffins show intricate paintings and spells from what we know as the Book of Dead, which is a famous book, which I'll mention a little bit about. But this thing about coffins is really interesting, really, really interesting, because there's an exodus, right? So when the Romans conquer Egypt in 30 years BC, there's an exodus. And what we find is that some Egyptians are actually sort of going into the Roman world and getting lost. And there's evidence of mummification occurring in York in wooden coffins. We got evidence that they were intricately painted in York, and these people were Egyptian and they were settling in York, right? And that was all to do with the fact that the Romans had conquered Egypt in the first place. But obviously we're talking more in about AD 200. But these traditions of this world of ancient Egypt continued. They wish to continue hieroglyphics and all these other things. So this is actually something known as the Book of the Dead, and the Book of the Dead comes from all the way back into the New Kingdom, all the way back around the time of the death of Akhenaten, right? And the Book of the Dead is the book that continues in use all the way to the age of Cleopatra in 30 years BC. The book is the closest term to describe the loose collection of texts consisting of a number of magic spells, right? Think of Aleister Crowley. Magic spells intended to assist a dead person's journey through the underworld and into the afterlife, and written by many priests over a period of 1,000 years. It's a bit like an Egyptian Bible, but very different. In 1842, Egyptologist Karl Richard Lepsius, Dr. Karl Richard Lepsius, some of you may have heard of him if you studied ancient Egypt, introduced for these texts the German name Totenbuch. And basically, the direct translation of this is the Book of Dead. But eventually, it became known as the spells of coming forth by day. And this particular scene is a papyrus scene, a detailed papyrus scene that was copied and reused. But this is an original, not from 1,000 years BC, but 1,275 BC. And it's all about the sense of afterlife. It's all about the sense of, yeah, this is another point. This is back to what my point is that when we look at ancient Egypt, we're looking at a world that is constantly changing, but still people are sort of people are whoever's ruling over Egypt, they're continuing all the traditions. It's really, really interesting and really, really in depth in the way we think about that. So again, they've got influence from the Greeks. The Greeks help out as well. We chuck in the Greeks. Legal documents, magical spells, Book of Dead, we mentioned that. Temple accounts, many written in demonic script, which is basically a demonic script. It's not hieroglyphics. It's just basically a form of lowercase writing. So when you guys went to school, I went to school, we did handwriting, right? So basically, instead of doing big capitals and stuff like that, we're now starting to, and this is basically what demonic script is. So what we do have is that in this period, right, maybe it's not as religious as it was before. So we've got Tanis, the royal necropolis of the Libyan kings. That's where the Libyan kings are buried, at Tanis. It's the city that they actually is actually mentioned in Raiders of the Lost Ark. There you go. And again, the places that become big in this again are the likes of going down to Thebes, for example, and going south, right? So we've got all this going on. There's Thebes there, Luxor and Karnak. And again, what we do have is evidence of these people's lives. And we've got the evidence of these people's lives. Instead of me talking about sort of a world of ancient Egypt, it's about leaders and stuff. Let's talk about men and women for once. So there's a site that is becoming more and more popular, which I would go off and do a little bit of research. In ancient Egypt, they've excavated this site, which is Deir el Medina. And Deir el Medina is actually, if I can get this on, it's basically a workman's village. That's where all the workmen lived. That's where all the normal, everyday families live. Women, children, men. So this is a place, this is really important. So Deir el Medina, this is where the workmen are. These are the people who would work on the temples. These are the people who work on the roads. These are the people who would work on the landscape, not the farmers. These are sort of the industrial workers, and there that is. And another thing that's actually becoming massive. Oh yeah, we've got these little we've got these little burials that they're quite cute little miniature pyramids, right? Deir el Medina. Or one thing, if you didn't know, that probably around this time, it was starting to become commonplace, not in these types of villages, but for your loved ones to be buried in a garden, in a little sort of tomb at the end of the garden. And that's what that sort of reminded me of. And it was still a practice that they were doing in ancient Egypt until about the 1920s. So your grandmother would be buried in the garden in something like this. So that's what they still used to do in Cairo up until about the 1920s. I saw a really interesting in-depth program about it. And what we need to do is thank this last period. If we sort of go to, back again. If we go back to, we need to thank this period for Alexandria and the library, and the lighthouse. This is a period that, and that's another thing. That's another thing. When we think about libraries, the Egyptians basically invented, and what happened is then the Romans copied a lot of it. The Romans sort of copied lots of this stuff, and so we've got the great library. Now, what we then got to mention, right, is where ancient Egypt starts to come into the Roman world, but it's already in the Roman world because, the Romans would have been aware of this area. The Greeks are in there, sort of all the rest of it. Sorry, Alexandria in particular, and they're going down the Nile. And then what we then do is we get to this guy. Now, this is really interesting. This then leads us into Cleopatra, right? Now, this period, Alexander the Great conquers ancient Egypt in 332 BC, right? He conquers it, right? So Alexander the Great entered Egypt in 332. and he was hailed as a liberator from the Persians. So he'd rescued the land from the Persians, right? This was a guy who was going to kick the Persians' arse, right? And Darius, in his great scrap in 330, with Alexander the Great, would be defeated. So again, what we've got is that in this period, we've got Alexandria itself is now coming into its own, right? Because where you've got sort of the idea of lighthouses and the library, Alexandria itself, named after Alexander the Great, this is when it all explodes. This is when Egypt starts to come into its own. This is a new revival for ancient Egypt, thanks to Alexander the Great, regaining, the likes of Egypt from the Persians once and for all. Which became the cultural capital of the Mediterranean. Alexander was the place to be. Alexandria, the city named after Alexander, the new city and what was built on earlier stuff there. This is now the place to be, right? So now this is where it comes into play. Now, on the death of Alexander the Great, I need to look this up. I think it's 321. On the death of when Alexander the Great died, his empire that stretched all the way to the Hindu Kush, right, and Afghanistan. One of his generals, Ptolemy, who was Alexander the Great's favorite general, took control of ancient Egypt, right? Oh, and by the way, we now start to think that Alexander the Great was buried alive because they thought he was dead, but he wasn't. But where are we getting that from? That's another story. Now, this is when Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals, you could call him Ptolemy the Great the First, right? He took control of ancient Egypt, and then it was now known as the Ptolemaic era, the Ptolemaic period, the Ptolemaic after Ptolemy dynasty. The Ptolemaic dynasty lasted from, let's give it 332 all the way through to 30 years BC. The Ptolemaic dynasty blended Greek and Egyptian traditions. Greek rulers portrayed as pharaohs. What is all this? Do you know what? It's like, I don't know. It's like you can't change anything in Egypt. It just remains Egyptian. It's like the magic land of Egypt. You can't change it. It's like, Greek rulers portrayed as pharaohs. What? Temples built in Egyptian style and hieroglyphics used by the Greeks. And I was sat back thinking, well, how does this work? You've conquered a country, but it's the same country as when you conquered it, right? However, the Greek became the language of administration, but Egyptian life continued along the Nile. Hieroglyphics still being used. So the lower language is now Greek. That's the only change, right? So the dynasty ends with Cleopatra the Seventh, who allied with Julius Caesar, and then eventually Mark Antony, and was then defeated. So when we look at this and we try to understand the backdrop of this, then Egypt is like a great enigma. It definitely had its power over like Alexander the Great, and Isis, Osiris, Horus, and Amun were still the deities that everyone allowed to continue. So after 1,000 years of absolute uproar, nothing changes. It's odd. It's very odd. So there was a Greek ruler called Serapis, who basically blended some of the Greek and the Egyptian gods together. Temples remained the economic centers throughout the new Egyptian world, this Ptolemaic world that ends in 30 years BC. And also, right, the old Egyptian gods become more wealthier. And it's said that the priests, no, not the old Egyptian gods become wealthier. The old Egyptian priests gained great wealth, and some rivaled pharaohs in power. And everyday Egyptians still relied on the Nile's farming and trade. Artisans inscribed preserved traditions through temple schools. So that's odd as well. So whoever conquers this country, right, you send your children to school, and scribes and people were still taught in the old Egyptian ways. Women held unusual social rights compared to Greek and Rome. So the women in ancient Egypt were much more powerful than in the Greek and the Roman world, which is another key point. So maybe what we need to do now, we need to try and get an image of Cleopatra, who wasn't known as Cleopatra the Last. She was known as Cleopatra the Seventh. So Cleopatra, and it was Cleopatra the Seventh. There we go. And she was the last leader. And there she is. Beautiful marble there. Yes. She looks like a bloke, but definitely wasn't a bloke. She gave birth to Julius Caesar's own son. So Cleopatra herself portrayed as a man, but was definitely a woman. So Cleopatra reigned from 51 to 30 years BC, and the last of the Ptolemies, the last of the dynasties of ancient Egypt, I would say. She was fluent in Egyptian. Unlike most predecessors, she tried to revive native rule, allied first with Julius Caesar, Lloyd George, then Mark Antony, both relationships politically motivated to preserve Egyptian independence. After their defeat by Octavian, Augustus, who would become the Roman emperor, right, at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Cleopatra took her own life. Some say she was bitten by an asp. Egypt became a Roman province. And again, there she is. You know, tiara there. Look, and obviously she's got the typical sort of headdress for pharaoh. And if we go back to, and not that there, I've got to go back to my images. Right, okay, back to images. There. Okay, good. Got the map again. Nice little map. So this. Oh, this is the map I was looking for. There it is. It was known as Egyptus. That's what the Romans called it, Egyptus. Now, there's a change. There's a change. Egypt became a Roman province, but because of the rules in the Roman state, Pax Romana, Egyptian religion and art survived for centuries under Roman rule, including mummification. And as we said, we gave those examples from York. Now, when we think about all of this, and what we're going to do, we're going to run through a few Google images and stuff at the end. We know that hieroglyphics were still being used in the AD 400s, right? We know that because we've got some examples, but less and less people knew hieroglyphics. And what the Romans would do to conquer to conquer lands, they would basically give you a choice, right? You can be subjugated by Roman rule and continued continue with your gods and stuff. If you don't agree to that, then we'll, enslave you all, right? Most people just went along with what the Romans said. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to do a little bit of scratch and sniff at the end, and then we'll do a little closing reflection. Right, so let's just I got a little bit of a list here, right? We're just going to go through a quick Google. That's what we're going to do. So just do a quick Google thing. Right. So what we got, we've so this sort of gives you a bit of an overview, right? So back to this one, you've already seen this one, but we're going to show it again. Suetonius. And again, this is that period when you've got, look at that there, a Libyan coffin, shows the wealth of the Delta rulers despite decline. So you've got this sort of silver, gold coffin, absolutely beautiful. So the next thing is there's a statue here, right, which is in the British Museum. And let's not go down that road. Statue, not of Zeus, wait for it, and this you will find in the British Museum. And that is in the British Museum. Now, again, that's a Nubian pharaoh, depicts a Nubian pharaoh, evidence of Kushite control. But again, this is a pharaoh that is sort of, this is, it portrays everything that's ancient Egyptian, even though you're from another world, really. And then there's another one here. This is thought to be one of the last sort of true pseudo-native Egyptian leaders. I think we're looking about 525 before the Persians. And this is a stelae associated. Stelae is a carving sort of history. And then what we've got there, we've got this interesting stelae, which is, it's not the Metternich stelae. Hang on, which one is it? Oh, there, it's that stelae, there, that one. And again, very ancient Egyptian. So it's 525. And then what we've got is there's the temple of Edfu. Right. So this carving, the stelae from Neck to Nebo. That's roughly before 525. And then what we then have, if we type in here, we type in the temple, not of Hatshepsut, which is a great temple naturally. It's the temple of Edfu. And there. Look at, there we go. This is the temple of Edfu. And this is a temple that you will have seen in many Hollywood films because it's so intact. Now, this is built in the Ptolemaic period. So this is after 332. This is after when ancient Egypt is conquered by Alexander the Great, and this is Ptolemy the First. But look at it. It's ancient Egyptian, but the Greeks build it, or they have help. One of the most important artifacts ever found and translated by Champollion is the Rosetta Stone. And you've all probably heard of the Rosetta Stone, but let's just show it. Now, the Rosetta Stone was found by complete accident, as most of these things are. It's a trilingual decree, right? And it's key to deciphering hieroglyphics, right? So if you just go on to the Wikipedia entry there, so the is carved in is carved basically in this period. You know, this stone itself, we got it dated from 196 BC, and there is ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics on it, demonic script, which is a lower form of ancient Egyptian, but they were able to translate this because there's a Greek script on it as well. So there's 3 scripts. It's a trilingual decree. Trilingual, right? Not bilingual, trilingual. Dated to 196 BC in the reign of another Ptolemy, right? And it's got 3 languages in it, and they were able to translate hieroglyphics by comparing the Greek on there, which is absolutely brilliant. And then finally, as we call this a day now, and I'll just do a little bit of a conclusion, and we bring it all together about this ancient Egyptian world. So you've got Cleopatra, and we're going to do a coin. Yes, the ancient Egyptians had coins as well. And that's oh right, that's Ptolemy for a coin. Hang on a minute, let's just find a coin from her. Oh, there it is. It's that one in the middle there. And I don't know if we can get a better one. That one on the right. No, that's Mark Antony. That's Cleopatra and Mark Antony there. There it is. And that is a coin of Cleopatra. And it's very interesting, this coin, because there's a departure from the ancient Egyptian world, but Cleopatra does try to restore the values of the ancient Egyptian world at the same time. And there she is, a beautiful lady, by all respects. So let's just do a little bit of an overview. So closing reflection, really. So when we take this really short look at Egypt from 1000 BC, 1070 BC, I put the Libyans in that, yeah, to 30 BC, we're not looking at decline, we're looking at survival. They keep surviving. They keep being kicked, beaten, they keep surviving. Rome is too much. Nobody really survives Rome. A civilization that refused to die. Even in the ages of Rome, it refused to die. Adapting again and again under Libyans, Numidians, the Black Pharaohs, Persians, Greeks, and finally Romans. The temples of Edfu, the Rosetta Stone, the mummies of Tanis, the Libyan mummies of Tanis, even the story of Cleopatra herself, which is the famous one with all of this. All of these show that Egypt never truly vanished. And guys, you can see the stuff in Egypt today. It's there. Great pyramids, there you go. But from this period, you got the temple of Edfu, and it's just thinking, well, my God, you know, hang on a minute. It's a temple in Edfu. Egypt's being conquered by the Greeks, but they're still building things as if they were built by ancient Egyptians. So they never truly vanished. It's a story of resilience, and it reminds us that history is not only about golden ages, but about endurance and identity. So thank you, folks. And next time we'll explore how Roman rule reshaped this ancient land. Well, we won't do that yet, but what we can say is that ancient rule reshaped all the lands. But in regard to ancient Egypt and in regard to ancient Greece, as Judith experienced, Rome kept most of it in the idea of Pax Romana. What traces of pharaonic culture lived on into the Christian Islamic eras are there for everybody to see. And it's so good that we've got so much of ancient Egypt from many periods still surviving out there. So on that note, we're going to call that a day. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. We're back again. So folks, let's see.
I'm going to go first and say I've got to go.
Okay, you can go first and then David.
Yeah.
Right, so
bye.
Thank you. Anyhow, I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot. Lots that I didn't know. I've got to study it up so I know what's what. You don't hear that history most, you know. So
You don't. What you hear about ancient Egypt is the old stuff, not that stuff.
Yes, yeah. So thanks so much, and I'll see you then. Okay, next Wednesday. All
I'll
right.
see you next Wednesday in the other class, Pat. I'll see you then. Take care.
Bye, all.
Bye,
No,
Pat.
no, no, no. Right, David. Anything you want to say?
No, thank you. Very good. Good night, all.
Okay.
Good night, David.
Night, David. You have a good
Nice,
one.
David.
Bye.
Not that. Night, David. Right. Who's next? Let's do Roger, babe.
Right, very interesting. A lot of new stuff there for me to get the timeline. One little question which you can't develop now is when the Western Roman Empire collapsed, was it the Eastern Empire who took control of Egypt, or was it just internal?
No, that is a really interesting question. It was for whoever controlled ancient Egypt controlled what was left of the Roman Empire, and Justinian obviously seized ancient Egypt. It was part of the Eastern division of the Byzantine Empire.
It's finishing in a couple of minutes.
The one thing that you look about all of this is then Egypt is one of the first areas that actually falls to Islam, and but for a while Egypt is in the clutches of the Byzantine Empire. But now this is a really interesting thing, that when you look at Byzantine culture in Egypt, I gotta put a stab in the dark from what I do and what I've studied. Byzantine culture didn't survive in Egypt, right? But everything else survived in Egypt. That's an interesting point. But yeah, it was absorbed by the Byzantine world in the East, Roger.
So it faded, and soon after, by say the 600s, 700s, was it a sort of internal government, or was it again influenced by another build-up of empires? I don't know what the history was at that stage, late.
So what's the date we're talking about?
Who was running Egypt in the late 600s, 700s? But we were gearing up.
That was the Byzantines, but obviously they're gonna lose control to the Muslims eventually.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Somewhere I don't know how the timeline.
Actually, to be honest with you, I think actually the Egyptian Egypt is taken over. I think, if I'm right in thinking, it's taken over a lot earlier. I think it's in the clutches of the Mohammedans by about AD 800.
Yeah, must have been. Yeah.
I'm just gonna do a quick search on that, because I want to know the answer as well, because the Library of Alexandria Library of Alexander went up in flames, and we blame it on the Muslims, but then it was actually the Christians who set light to it. So I'm just trying to find a history of this. We'll just get a precise date there. Anything else you want to ask there, Roger, before we...
No, that was it. It's just something that made me think that we've got so much of the ancient stuff and all that, but there's a movement through, was uninfluenced by previous to the fall of the Roman Empire in the West. The Byzantines were there, yes, expect them to have a go until others, Muslims and whoever else, had a go at them from even the African subcontinent, maybe somewhere. Nubians had gone by then, but what was left there? You know what I mean? It's a sort of, be nice just to see how it rolls on, but it's another whole subject, so you can't do much tonight.
Actually, I got my dates. I got my dates on Egypt completely wrong. Actually, it looked like the forces of Muhammad managed to capture the likes of Egypt from as early as 645 AD.
Oh, right. So,
which is about 20 years.
Later, yeah.
Which is about 20 years of the beginning of the Islamic religion.
Yes. the build up there.
So yeah, they took over Egypt quite early.
I'd wondered if somewhere later on the Turks had had a go at it, but who knows? That's as I say, another subject we can't do so far, sometime.
Another subject.
But another subject perhaps we can develop somewhere else. Yes, I don't know anything about. Need to know a bit more. Development.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, Roger. Okay, thanks, Rog. Anything you want to say, Judith? Judith, she's asleep. Judith, you witch. Right, she's not talking to us. Anne.
Well, it would seem, looking at the different people that came into rule Egypt, they must have really admired the culture in wanting to keep it the same. You know, there must have been tremendous admiration for it, for them to do that, which seems very unusual. You know, we're all the conquering. It doesn't usually happen, does it? That was really interesting. Can I ask a very flippant question, though? When you know, there was a beast that was representing the Persians with the beard, and the beast appeared to have shoes on. It's puzzled me. I've since looked at. I've never seen a portraiture of an animal. They show the hooves and stuff like that. It appeared, it could be that I misjudged it, but it looked as though it had got shoes on.
Well, we're going to look at that now.
No, I thought it was hooves.
No, it's hooves, darling.
Pardon?
Oh, yeah.
It's hooves.
Hooves. It looks like shoes because it fits. It's sort of it has a line fitting round. You know, like that. Do look like shoes. They don't look like
boots.
They
like boots.
But they look. They look very unusual.
Oh yeah, very stylized.
Oh, they're well kept.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
They're well kept. So no, I see what you mean. Yeah. So this is basically the Sphinx that all these cultures seem to use.
Yeah.
From all the way down from Babylon, you know, you see this from much earlier ancient Egypt. That sort of beard, the sort of Assyrian, you know, the Persian type beard, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah. It's just his feet that puzzled me. I may not have been seeing it right, but anyway,
maybe you could look into that a bit more. That'd be good.
Thanks for that. Anyway,
my pleasure. Right, so we'll give Judith another shout. Judith, I think she's fallen asleep. Will.
No, I find it quite interesting. I'd make a point. The Nubians were established between the Blue Nile and the confluence of the White Nile. So at the southern part of Egypt. And of course, the Nubians did support, if you go back to Ramesses and you go back with 10 Commandments, etc., you know, they supported the Egyptian army fighting some of the other tribal areas, tribes around the area. So.
And you made another point. It just makes you think, if people can rise to being important conquerors of ancient Egypt, it must mean that their land was quite wealthy and rich, and we just think about it as all desert, but that can't be the case.
That's changed, isn't it? All
there is that, but also when you think about it, it's Egypt. They do say there's some arguments over this, that the deserts of Libya used to be tropical rainforest once.
Yeah. So well
done. Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And lastly, Andy Babes.
Only one. You showed some images of Cleopatra, which was interesting because they do not match all the other images either. And there seem to be lots of different images of Cleopatra. And I kind of wondered which one, because they're quite different.
All based on Elizabeth Taylor, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I'd go with that one.
And also you've got Carry On Cleo. So, you know, they got different representations there.
So I kind of just wondered, you know, I'm guessing there is no definite or definitive one, because otherwise they would have been quite clear by now. But
there's lots of representations of Cleopatra, and she wasn't somebody that reigned for 1,000,000 years. She reigned for 21 years, but Naturally, she wanted to distance herself from the likes of Nefertiti, the likes of Hatshepsut. You know, Egypt has got a really good history of female leaders, and you know, she was Cleopatra, the seventh. So you know, it goes to show. So it goes to show. So you are right there, Andy. Anyone else want to say anything else? Right, we're going to give one more call out for Judith. Judith! Hey, Jude. Why are you sad? Right, no, she's not there. I don't know what's happened to her. Right, anyone else want to say anything else before we finish, folks?
Well, thanks, Carl.
No, thanks.
Good night,
All right,
all.
well, all on for next week. You've got an idea. We got loads of stuff next week, so it's all to look forward to. That lot of diversity next week. So anyway, good night, everybody. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for your shekels, guys. And night, Will and Roger, Andy, and Judith, and anyone else who knows me. Take care. Night.
Thanks, Carl. Good night.
Cheers.
Night, folks. Night. Judith, are you there? No, she's gone. Night, Roger, baby, you old twonk. Night, Judith. You've left us. You've fallen asleep. Fast asleep in a chair. Can't see it, but don't matter. Right, night, everybody on YouTube. Nothing in that window 1. Nothing in that window 2, 3, 4, 5. Night, Judith. And nothing there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. People, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'm off. Nothing there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Night, folks. Night.